Howdy partners, it's so good to be here yet again. I just came back from the cinema after seeing Twisters. Yes, yet another Hollywood sequel, or in this case, remake, reboot, I don't know, all three of the above. In any case, the usual Hollywood tactic of reliving past glories. The original Twister film that came out in 1996, so what, it's been 28 years now? In any case, a hot minute since that came out, so they're trying to recapture the flames of what that success was. And generally speaking, I'm not that keen on these quick cash grab that Hollywood embarks on all too often. As you may have noticed with this YouTube channel, I'm generally more on the art house, experimental indie side of things, though I always keep an open mind for any surprise success stories. And indeed, just weeks before this film came out, I learned that Lee Isaac Chung, the director of that phenomenal 2020 film Minari, he would be the director of this project as well. That film Minari totally earns all 6 of its Oscar nominations. It was a wonderful film, so I was hoping that this Twister sequel would be the exception to the rule, but unfortunately I don't think it is quite the case. Frankly, I thought it was a rather predictable film. The intro sequence on its own, you can see how that's going to turn out a mile away. You do not need to be clairvoyant at all, and the rest of the film doesn't fare all that much better in that regard, though obviously I won't go into details to avoid spoilers. But for a brief synopsis, we are following this retired tornado chaser who returns to Oklahoma to assist with gathering scientific data about these catastrophic tornadoes, and admittedly this is a very noble cause, and it is one of the aspects about the film that I appreciated the most. And during these scientific endeavors, we meet this cowboy tornado wrangler slash YouTube star played by none other than Glenn Powell, and his star power is shining oh so bright in this film, almost as bright as his pearly white smile. It might sound like I'm making fun of him, but I promise you I'm not. He's actually one of the major highlights of the film, without question, but nonetheless it is totally over the top. And if I were to expand briefly on some of the other praise that I could give to the film, I personally really appreciate all the meteorological science that the film explores, particularly on how these massive storms are formed. They don't go into all too much scientific depth on how that is the case, but it was enough to catch my interest, and it is something that I don't see all that often on film, so hey. And speaking of the storms themselves, visually, they are quite spectacular. The budget clearly went into the VFX of this film, and it totally pays off. And as you can imagine, the destruction that these storms unleash upon mankind is quite harrowing to behold. So for no other reason, the visual and auditory experience of this film totally merits to buy a ticket to go see this on the big screen. And though there aren't any incredibly standout performances, apart from Glenn Powell of course, I do find that there is this baseline chemistry between the cast that works relatively well, even if most, if not all, the characters aren't all that deep, if I'm being honest. But even so, there are quite a few heartfelt moments, and I do generally love this idea of using science for the good of mankind and to try and find a solution to this pretty terrible situation that they're in. Though by that same token, the film opens the doors to these themes of exploitative land grabbing that I find are very timely in our modern world. And unfortunately, I find that there's little to any substance in that regard. It's one of the most important questions that the film asks of its viewers, but by the end of the film, it literally goes nowhere. It's a total missed opportunity because, like I said, it's something very timely. Admittedly, I'm not super well versed in this story of modern trauma that's plaguing humanity, but while watching the film and seeing these themes of exploitative land grabbing, I couldn't help but think of the Maui forest fires and how people were profiting off of people's loss as a consequence of that. It really is a shame because I feel like there's another film buried within here where we could have explored this dual scenario of Mother Nature ravaging our home while simultaneously the greed of mankind also bringing its own problems in there. And frankly, I think Lee Isaac Chung could have been the perfect indie film director to tackle these kind of intimate human dramas, but sadly this film does not exist. So I'll be honest, I'm a little bummed out by that. And as I alluded to previously, I do find that this is a very painted by the numbers narrative arc that we see so often in Hollywood films, even though we have 3 screenwriters credited on this film. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but there it is. I was genuinely hoping that this film would be the exception to the rule, but alas, it is not. So therefore, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. It is by no means a terrible film. Once again, the visual and auditory aspect of it, and Glenn Powell is charming and a lot of fun. But unfortunately, overall, I felt rather lukewarm towards the film. And I would be curious to revisit the original Twister film to see, 1, how that film aged, and 2, how it compares to this new sequel, remake, reboot, if you will. Because it has been a minute, and I remember nothing whatsoever of that film. In any case, that will be all for today. Wishing you and your loved ones nothing but the best. Take care and talk to you soon.